Country's water reserves have dropped to their lowest level in 80 years.
Revered by historians and prophets alike, the Euphrates River is more than just a river. It is the lifeblood of ancient civilization. For thousands of years, its waters have nourished empires, inspired scripture, and sustained millions across the Middle East. Flowing through the cradle of human history, the Euphrates has witnessed the rise and fall of kings, the birth of agriculture, and the whispers of prophecy.
Since January, the water level has plummeted by 5 meters. It hovers just dozens of centimeters above the so-called dead level.
But now, something unimaginable is unfolding. The river is drying up, and as its waters vanish, something terrifying is happening, and it's only just the beginning. The lifeline of the Middle East. Geography and importance of the Euphrates River. The Euphrates River is the longest river in Western Asia, stretching about 1,740 miles, or roughly 2,800 kilometers. It begins high in the rugged mountains of eastern Turkey, formed by the joining of two main tributaries, the Karasu and the Murat rivers. From there, it flows southeast through Syria and continues into Iraq. Eventually, it meets the Tigris River near the southern edge of Iraq to form the Shatt al-Arab, a major waterway that empties into the Persian Gulf. Alongside the Tigris, the Euphrates cuts through the center of what is known as the Fertile Crescent, a region famous for its early agriculture and human settlements. But beyond its historical importance, the river is remarkable for its physical and environmental impact. In many areas it traverses, the Euphrates is the only significant source of fresh water. It winds through deserts, rocky valleys, and flat plains where rainfall is extremely scarce. Today, the Euphrates supports millions of people. More than 70% of its water is used to irrigate farmland, helping grow essential crops like wheat, barley, and cotton. The rest is split between providing drinking water, domestic use, and generating electricity through hydroelectric dams. The Euphrates flows through or near 4 countries: Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and a small corner of Saudi Arabia. In some areas, the river is wide and deep, while in others, it narrows and slows, surrounded by steep cliffs or dry terrain. Its flow can vary greatly depending on the season and rainfall in the mountains where it begins. The Euphrates was once one of the most vital and fascinating rivers in the world, a powerful force in one of the driest regions on Earth. But today, the Euphrates is in serious decline. Water levels have dropped dramatically over the past few decades, driven by dam construction, climate change, and mismanagement. As the river shrinks, it's easy to focus on the crisis unfolding now. But what exactly is being lost? For thousands of years, the Euphrates was more than a river. It was a force that shaped entire civilizations. It gave rise to the first cities, sustained empires, and supported the birth of agriculture. Generations built their lives around it, and rulers fought to control its flow. Along its banks, some of humanity's earliest advances and greatest conflicts took place. What made this river so vital? And why has its decline triggered such deep concern across the region and beyond? How the Euphrates fueled ancient civilizations. For more than 6,000 years, the Euphrates River has been one of the most important rivers in human history. It played a huge role in the rise of some of the earliest and most powerful civilizations in human history. Great empires like Sumer, Babylon, and Assyria were all born and grew strong along its winding banks. These early societies relied on the Euphrates for almost everything: clean water, food, trade routes, and transportation. It gave them what they needed, not just to survive, but to thrive. Along with its sister river, the Tigris, the Euphrates helped form a region known as Mesopotamia, which means land between rivers. This land was extremely fertile, the soil was rich, and the rivers provided steady water, making it much easier to grow crops here than in most other places. Because farming was more productive, people had more than enough food. This allowed them to stop roaming as hunters and gatherers. They settled down, built permanent homes, and formed tight communities that later grew into large, powerful cities. With time, these communities created some of the first governments, religious systems, marketplaces, and written languages. These inventions weren't just useful, they were world-changing. The beginnings of civilization as we know it started in this river-fed land. One of the greatest cities to rise from this region was Babylon. It became famous for its strength, beauty, and innovation, and it owed much of that to the Euphrates. According to ancient legend, Babylon was the site of the Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. These gardens were said to hang in terraces high above the ground, fed by clever irrigation systems that pulled water straight from the river below. Without the Euphrates, this wonder would have been impossible. But the river wasn't just important for physical survival. It carried deep meaning for the people who lived near it. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest stories ever written, the Euphrates appears as the backdrop to heroic journeys and tragic losses. In the book of Genesis in the Bible, it's one of the 4 rivers flowing out of the Garden of Eden. This shows that many people believed the Euphrates had spiritual power, a link between earth and the divine. To control the Euphrates was to hold power. Whoever ruled the river could feed their armies, grow their cities, and gain wealth. But those who lost it often saw their empires fall. The river gave life, but it also decided who rose and who fell. With the Euphrates holding the power to make or break a kingdom, modern nations would eventually find themselves locked in bitter disputes over the same waters that once built empires, laying the foundation for the first of many water conflicts. The start of water conflicts. By the middle of the 20th century, the Euphrates River had become far more than a long ribbon of water winding through the heart of the Middle East. It had turned into something critical, a shared source of life, power, and survival. For thousands of years, its waters supported farming communities, fueled trade, and connected civilizations. But by the 1940s, it had taken on a new meaning, a vital national resource, one that countries began to see as worth protecting. After the fall of the Ottoman Empire at the end of World War I, new borders reshaped the region. Where once a single empire controlled the flow of the river, there were now 3 countries with stakes in the Euphrates: Turkey at the source, Syria in the middle, and Iraq downstream. Each had its own interests, and all relied heavily on the river to meet the rising demands of growing populations, agriculture, and infrastructure. In an effort to prevent disputes, Turkey and Iraq signed the 1946 Treaty of Friendship. It was a notable attempt to handle shared water use peacefully and cooperatively. The agreement stated that Turkey would not make changes to the river's flow, like building dams or redirecting water, without first consulting Iraq. In return, Iraq was granted permission to build dams within Turkish territory to help regulate and manage the flow for downstream use. At the time, the treaty appeared wise and forward-looking. It offered a sense of mutual respect and seemed to acknowledge the importance of shared responsibility. However, as the years passed, the pressures mounted. Urban centers grew, farmland expanded, demand for electricity and irrigation increased, and with those changes, each country began to look more inward. They wanted to secure their own access to the river, first for stability, then for growth, and eventually for national development. What began as a hopeful agreement started to fray. Trust eroded little by little, and each side began to worry that the other might act alone to secure more water. Then, a third country stepped into the center of the river's unfolding story: Syria. The multi-nation struggle over the Euphrates. In the 1960s and 70s, both Turkey and Syria fully turned their attention to the Euphrates, hoping to reshape their futures through large-scale water projects. Each country saw the river as a key to national development. They wanted more than just water. They wanted energy, better agriculture, and greater independence. This was a time of great ambition, and both nations believed the Euphrates could help unlock their full potential. Turkey launched one of its biggest development efforts, known as the Southeastern Anatolia Project, or GAP. This project aimed to completely transform the country's southeastern region through water and energy. At its heart was the Ataturk Dam, an enormous structure capable of holding nearly 48 billion cubic meters of water. It would power homes, irrigate vast farmlands, and bring new life to the region. Altogether, GAP included 22 dams and 19 hydroelectric power stations. It was one of the largest projects of its kind in the world at the time. Meanwhile, Syria was making plans of its own. Around the same time, work began on the Tabqa Dam. Once completed, it created Lake Assad, one of Syria's largest man-made reservoirs. Like Turkey, Syria hoped this new water resource would strengthen its agriculture, generate electricity, and improve everyday life for millions. These efforts brought excitement and hope, but they also came with risks. The Euphrates does not belong to just one country. It begins in the mountains of eastern Turkey, flows through Syria, and ends in Iraq. That meant any major changes upstream, especially dams and water control systems, would affect those downstream, and by the mid-1970s, Iraq was feeling the impact. Between 1973 and 1975, the amount of water flowing into Iraq dropped sharply, by nearly 40%. This sudden decrease caused alarm. Iraqi leaders feared that their upstream neighbors were holding back the water. Tensions rose quickly. At one point, Iraq even warned Syria that it might take action against the Tabqa Dam if water levels didn't improve. Fortunately, with the help of Saudi Arabia and the Soviet Union, the situation cooled down. Their quiet, behind-the-scenes efforts helped calm the waters, literally and figuratively. To avoid more water shortages and to ease concerns, Turkey and Syria signed a protocol in 1987. Under this agreement, Turkey promised to release a set minimum amount of water per second into Syria. Syria, in turn, agreed to share that water with Iraq. There were also some mutual understandings about cooperation near shared borders. While the agreement helped for a while, it wasn't permanent. Either side could change its approach in the future. Years later, in 2009, new memoranda of understanding were signed, this time between Turkey and Iraq, and also between Turkey and Syria. These new agreements aim to encourage better cooperation and more efficient use of the river. Around the same time, a joint initiative called the Euphrates-Tigris Initiative for Cooperation, ETIC, was formed. It was designed to support dialogue and research among the three countries. However, this effort lacked the tools to enforce any real changes, so it remained mostly a talking platform. As the years passed, challenges continued to build. Agreements were made, but not always followed. Regional unrest made planning difficult, and now, a new problem has arrived: climate change. Rising temperatures, unpredictable rainfall, and longer dry seasons are putting even more pressure on the river. What was once a symbol of life and growth is now showing signs of struggle. The missed chances to build lasting cooperation are becoming more visible not just as lost opportunities, but as part of the reason the river is disappearing. The drying of the Euphrates. In recent years, the Euphrates River has been drying up at an alarming rate. Scientists and environmental experts warn that if current trends continue, the river could disappear completely by the year 2040. This grim prediction is not just a possibility, it's quickly becoming a reality. The reasons for the river's rapid decline are complex. Over the past 2 decades, rainfall in the Euphrates basin has fallen drastically. At the same time, temperatures have steadily risen, which has caused more water to evaporate from the river and the surrounding soil. Climate experts report that the region is experiencing longer, more severe droughts than ever before. These droughts are not just shrinking the river, they are damaging the land itself. The soil is becoming dry and cracked, making it harder for it to absorb and retain what little water is left. The human cost of this crisis is already severe and getting worse. In both Syria and Iraq, millions of people now struggle every day to find clean drinking water. In rural areas, many families have to walk miles just to fill containers from drying wells or polluted ponds. Crops are failing across wide regions, especially in Iraq's once fertile plains. Farmers who depended on the Euphrates for irrigation have watched their lands turn to dust. Wheat, barley, and vegetable harvests have dropped sharply. Food shortages are becoming more frequent, pushing up prices and increasing hunger, especially among vulnerable communities. Many people are heading to cities, which are already overcrowded and struggling to support large displaced populations. The collapse of agriculture has left thousands unemployed, deepening poverty and fueling social unrest. The situation has also led to serious public health problems. As the flow of the Euphrates slows down, water becomes stagnant and pollution levels rise. Many communities now rely on contaminated water sources, which has caused a spike in waterborne diseases like cholera and dysentery. Children and the elderly are especially at risk. Livestock, another crucial source of food and income, are dying in large numbers due to heat, thirst, and lack of grazing land. Herds that once roamed freely along green pastures now face hunger and disease. The death of these animals is not just a loss of meat or dairy. It means the loss of a way of life for many families. This water crisis is more than an environmental issue. It is a growing humanitarian disaster. And if no concrete actions are taken soon, the consequences could be irreversible. And as the riverbed cracks open, something so terrifying is happening. that even seasoned archaeologists are beginning to grow uneasy. When the waters vanish, terrifying revelations and the return of prophecy. As the Euphrates dries up, it is quite literally giving up its dead. The land that has once been hidden under its surface for thousands of years is now exposed to the open air, and what's coming out of the riverbed is nothing short of astonishing. In Iraq, archaeologists working near the drying sections of the Euphrates have made discoveries that are both historic and chilling. Ancient burial sites, long-forgotten jails carved into rock, and even the remains of old cities have begun to emerge from the cracked earth. One of the most striking finds is the reappearance of parts of the ancient city of Tel Bas, believed to have been submerged centuries ago and thought lost forever. But now, stone walls, crumbling towers, and broken artifacts are surfacing, offering new clues about civilizations that existed long before written history, and even before biblical times. Local villagers who live near the river say they've seen strange things in recent months. As the waterline continues to fall, human bones are being exposed to daylight for the first time in millennia. Some residents report finding old tools, pieces of pottery, and eerie ritual objects sticking out of the dry soil. One farmer said he saw what looked like a skull, partially buried near a cluster of ancient clay jars. Another described what appeared to be a stone tablet covered in symbols no one could read. These discoveries are drawing not only scientists and researchers, but also religious thinkers and curious onlookers. To many archaeologists, this is a golden opportunity to explore the lost past and uncover new chapters of human history. But to others, especially those with religious beliefs rooted in biblical prophecy, this moment is far more than a historical breakthrough. It's a spiritual warning. Many people familiar with the Bible point to a chilling passage in the book of Revelation. According to Revelation 9:14 and 16:12, the Euphrates River must dry up to make way for the kings from the east. It also mentions that the 4 angels, bound beneath the river, will be released when the time comes. For those who take these scriptures seriously, the current drying of the Euphrates is not just an environmental issue. It's a sign of something far more serious. At a recent religious conference in Uganda, known as the Watchers Conference, Pastor Joseph Kabbaleta told a packed audience that the disappearing river may be fulfilling ancient prophecy. He suggested that the drying of the Euphrates could signal the beginning of a spiritual countdown, pointing to the return of Christ, the final battle foretold in Ezekiel 38, and the possible reappearance of long-lost Edenic ground. Other faith leaders are echoing these sentiments, describing the phenomenon as a divine signal rather than just a climate event. While environmentalists warn about drought, upstream damming, and climate change, spiritual voices see the current moment as the long-predicted unfolding of end-times events. To them, the Euphrates drying is not just about water, it's about warnings, fulfillment, and things humanity can no longer ignore. Meanwhile, local communities across Iraq, Syria, and nearby regions are watching the changes with both awe and unease. While some believe this is nature taking its course, others are unsure how to explain what they're seeing. Whispers about strange sights near the riverbed, including unnaturally preserved bodies and mysterious carvings, have spread quickly. People are drawn to the river not just to witness the transformation, but to ask deeper questions about what it all means. Though some governments have expressed concern about water shortages and cross-border river management, most of the public attention remains on the eerie discoveries being made every week. Archaeological teams are now racing against time, trying to document and preserve what they can before the dry wind scatters these ancient remnants or reburies them in dust. What was once the cradle of civilization is now a place of mystery and unease. As the Euphrates continues to shrink, it's revealing more than just artifacts. It's opening a window into forgotten worlds and stirring age-old fears about what lies beneath. Whether these are the results of environmental decline or the fulfillment of ancient prophecy, one thing is clear. Something deeply terrifying is happening, and the world is starting to take notice. Now, calls to action to save the Euphrates River and preserve its enduring legacy are growing ever louder. The urgent call to save the Euphrates. As the Euphrates River faces historic decline, the question is no longer whether the crisis is real. It's what can still be done to stop it. Hydrologists, ecologists, climate scientists, and policy experts have warned for years that time is running out. But they also agree on something crucial. Saving the Euphrates is still possible if the right steps are taken now. One of the most urgent recommendations is the creation of a legally binding water-sharing agreement among Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. Experts emphasize that existing protocols are non-binding or outdated, lacking enforcement mechanisms, and transparency. Water governance must shift from unilateral control to cooperative basin-wide management, where decisions are made with shared data, equal input, and international oversight. The United Nations and regional institutions could play a stronger role in facilitating this.
The Euphrates River has receded, parching trees and leaving families of local farmers without water to drink.
Modernizing agriculture is another key priority. The Euphrates has been severely strained by inefficient irrigation systems that waste massive amounts of water. According to water management experts, switching to drip and sprinkler irrigation, repairing leaking canals, and training farmers in water-smart agriculture could cut water usage by up to 40% without sacrificing productivity. These reforms would require upfront investment but offer long-term sustainability. Ecologists also call for river restoration efforts. Re-wetting dried-out wetlands, restoring floodplains, and planting native vegetation along the banks would not only improve biodiversity, but also enhance natural water retention. These green infrastructure solutions reduce evaporation and prevent soil degradation, while also supporting local wildlife. International donors, including the World Bank and environmental NGOs, could fund these projects as part of broader climate adaptation programs. Climate scientists stress the need for data sharing and forecasting systems. Real-time satellite monitoring, rainfall prediction, and river flow tracking can help countries prepare for droughts and manage releases from dams more fairly. These tools already exist, but are underused in the Euphrates Basin. A regional data hub could serve as a central source of information, helping governments make science-based decisions rather than political ones. Public awareness is just as vital. Environmental educators and cultural leaders are urging schools, museums, and media outlets to reframe the Euphrates not just as a river, but as a shared heritage site. Campaigns that connect younger generations to the river's history, value, and vulnerability can build long-term stewardship. Some proposals even include designating the Euphrates as a UNESCO World Heritage River, a symbolic but powerful step toward global recognition. Experts agree that without action, the river could largely dry up within 2 decades, but they also agree on this: it doesn't have to. The Euphrates can still be saved through science, cooperation, and shared responsibility. What's needed now is the political will to match the urgency of the moment. The cost of failure will be measured not just in dry riverbeds, but in lost futures. What do you think about the River Euphrates? Feel free to share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.